A very warm welcome, everyone, from the team at Surgery International, and particularly those from the UK who join us for tonight's webinar on understanding your NHS pension. The Surgery website was created 2 years ago as a free-to-access content hub and now has surgeon subscribers in over 140 countries. But the UK is our largest demographic, hence we thought we'd deliver tonight's webinar exclusively for our UK audience. We've been producing our webinar series for 14 months, and in that time, I've hosted over 4,000 clinician delegates. All content is available on YouTube and covers a wide range of subjects such as surgical robotics, digital surgery, sustainability in surgery, surgical 3D, and even one on how a surgeon can build a social media profile and following. Just look for Surgery International on YouTube, and all of the content is there for you to view at your leisure. Back to tonight, and we anticipate this session will last around 45 minutes with a Q&A at the end. Feel free to ask questions, and time permitting, our speaker will do his best to answer them at the end of the presentation. As always, we'll be recording the session, which will be available tomorrow on our YouTube channel. Our guest speaker tonight is Mr. Andrew Godfrey, a consultant from financial firm Quilter. We have no relationship with Quilter, nor do we endorse their services or products, but Andrew has gifted his time tonight in the hope of helping you better understand your NHS pension. So without further ado, I'll hand over and I hope everybody finds the session useful.
Thank you very much, Andy. And welcome everybody to this presentation entitled NHS Pension Tax and McCloud. The reason why you're all here is because you find the NHS pension very complicated, and it is certainly very complicated. What I'm going to try and do in the next 45 minutes is uncomplicate it as much as possible and keep it as basic as possible. So I've concentrated on three areas. I'm just going to look initially at the total reward statement, which is probably your biggest and in a lot of instances your only source of data information regarding the NHS pension. Then I'm going to look at the two biggest problem areas that I encounter in my work with the medical profession, which is pension taxation and McCloud. So just a little bit about us first, which essentially I'm talking here about our partner firm for Quilter, which is MediFintech. They're NHS pension specialists that work directly with members and support hundreds of accountants and financial advisors working in the healthcare sector. We've helped thousands of healthcare workers understand their NHS pension and taxation, and we have saved millions of pounds identifying and correcting annual allowance tax charges and other errors on members' pension records. So, the total reward statement. This is available in an updated form each year. So, unless you print it out and keep paper records, you won't know what it looked like last year. But each year they update in around about August, and they cover the period to the end of the pension year, and the pension year runs from March to March. Now, in the 1995 section, you will not see a total reward statement updated beyond March 22 because, of course, everybody switched over from 95 to 2015 in April 2022. So that's the reason why you won't see a later date than this on a 1995 section. This particular consultant had been in since 1996, therefore, in calendar years, 26 years service from 96 to 22. Looking at the reckonable membership, it doesn't say 26 years, it says 33 and a half years. And this is because he bought added years and he signed up for a contract to buy 9 and a bit added years. And at this stage in 2022, he had bought 7.5 years. So the 7.5 years added years plus the 26 calendar years explains this reckonable membership figure. And as regards his standard benefits, this is the forecast of what he will get at retirement in terms of an annual amount of pension, or an annuity as we call it, of 62,000. And in the 95 scheme, you automatically accrue 3 times whatever you accrue in pension as a lump sum. So 62,000 pension, 186,000 lump sum. The dependent's pension is half of your pension, hence 31. And this figure here, hypothetical annuity cost, is basically telling you the true market value of your pension benefits. Another way of looking at it is, if you walked into the offices of Legal and General, for instance, tomorrow and said, I want you to give me a purchased life annuity contract that pays me £62,000 for the rest of my life and gives me £186,000 lump sum, they would be happy to do the business with you and they would charge you over £1.5 million for it. So this particular person's pension value at March 22 in the 95 section, and he's also a member in the 2015 section, which we'll go on to in a second, but just in the 95 section, it's worth over £1.5 million. Another way of looking at that is, if you were in a personal pension outside the NHS, you would have to have £1,560,000 in that fund in order to provide these benefits, 62,000 and 186,000 lump sum. So the NHS pension scheme is an incredibly good pension scheme. And this particular person's benefits are high. Now, this first block of figures is what they refer to as standard benefits, but everybody seems to want to take the maximum lump sum. Now, remember those figures, because it doesn't say tax-free lump sum, it says maximum lump sum. We'll get onto the tax-free element in a minute. But how it works is you can increase your lump sum by £12 by sacrificing £1 of your annual money. So for every £1 that your pension reduces by, your annual pension, your lump sum increases by £12. And in this instance, by permitting a cut in his annuity from 62,000 to 49,000, he's able to get a lump sum increase from 186,000 to 332,000. So an increase of nearly 150,000 for a cut of about 13,000, 12,000 in his annual money. And this lump sum is huge, 332, and he is able to take that from his pension scheme. But as I'll go on to explain a bit more later, the figure, the maximum figure for anybody, regardless of how this lump sum figure, how high this lump sum figure could be, the maximum tax-free lump sum is always 268,275. 2015 scheme. So, 2015 scheme, as I said before, when we changed from 95 to 2015 scheme, everybody went over in 2022, regardless of where they'd been before. The 95 scheme ended, 2008 scheme ended, and you're now in the 2015 scheme. So this guy's been in the 2022 scheme for 2 years, 22 to 24, and in 2 years he has accrued benefits of nearly £5,000 in annuity value. And as we can see, the 2015 scheme, although it's more generous than the 95 scheme in terms of the accrual rate, whereby it accrues 1/54th of your pay each year versus 1/80th in the previous 95 scheme. The quid pro quo with that is that you only get to retire with your full benefit 7 years later. And also that in contrast to the 3 times lump sum that you get in the 95 scheme, unfortunately, you do not get an automatic lump sum in the 2015 scheme. And the real life value of this, what you'd have to pay to an insurance company to get these benefits, is £89,000. And again, you can commute or reduce your annuity money in this instance by about £1,800 in order to get your maximum lump sum. Rather than zero, you can get nearly £21,000, but you have to sacrifice about £1,700 in order to do that. This is an important figure because it's showing you your annual contribution, how much is taken from your salary slip each year in order to get those benefits. But this figure should not be seen as the true cost of the pension to you, because this figure is deducted from your income figure before you pay income tax. So you're getting, with this salary level, you're getting a 45% tax cut on this. So it's really costing you about £11,000. And if we just go back to what £11,000, so £11,000 was this current year's, last year's 1 year's contributions, net contribution after tax, £11,000. Therefore, the previous year was probably about £9,000. So the total cost over the 2 years is £20,000. And for that, the benefit is nearly £5,000 in pension, which a pension company would value at £90,000. So in effect, it's cost you net about £20,000 in 2 years to accumulate a benefit that is worth 4.5 times that. Now, just before we go on to that next slide, I'll just throw out some figures which are quite startling to me. The NHS pension is reckoned to be just about the most generous pension scheme in the United Kingdom. And Royal London Insurance Company ran all the figures and compared it with your average personal pension for non-NHS staff. And NHS pension is reckoned to be 9 times better than a non-NHS pension. So it is an absolute gold-plated benefit to have. bearing that in mind, I am startled, and I'm sure you will be, to hear that uh, around 250,000, which is around 1 in 6 of all eligible NHS pension members, have opted out of the pension scheme. And not only is that startling as an absolute figure, 1 in 6, when it's 9 times better than what you can get anywhere else, it's a startling relative figure as well, because other public sector schemes, which are very similar to the NHS pension scheme, have far lower opt-out rates. The army, for instance, is something like 0.1% of people opting out versus 16% in the NHS. Teachers, I believe, is something like 4%. So why is the NHS so large when the benefit is so good? It can only be because of a lack of understanding, because it is so complex, so moving. So let's get rid of that lack of understanding and get you really appreciating the benefit and see if we can get these numbers down for people that are opting out of the scheme. So, new retirement flexibilities came in from October 2023, and the NHS pension scheme became even better than it was before. So now, from October 2023, 95 section members have got the same benefit that was previously only available in 2008 and 2015, which is their pension can work like a private pension drawdown scheme, almost, not quite as flexible, but almost as flexible. And they can draw down between 20% and 100% of their 95 pension benefits, of all their pension benefits, actually. So in whatever scheme they're in. So it was just that the 95 scheme, you couldn't do this before, or if you did do it, you had to leave the pension scheme altogether. So now members can take between 20% and 100% of their pension benefits on up to 2 occasions before then retiring completely. And the only condition for this is that you must cut your pensionable pay by 10% for 12 months. And then you can go back to the same level that you were at before. And it doesn't necessarily mean that less work has to be done overall, or even that you have to take a 10% income cut, because the actual NHS employers website advises trusts that the way to do this, if the easiest way to do it would be to drop one PA. Yeah. And most doctors, if they're taking partial retirement, are relatively towards the end of their career, and they're quite happy to do that for 12 months anyway, and they're quite happy to stay with one dropped PA after 12 months. However, if you don't want to reduce your income by 10%, you shouldn't actually have to, because they should create a single work contract. So your actual terms of employment don't change, but you have one contract where 90% of your pay is linked to a pension account, and you have another contract where 10% of your pay under exactly the same working terms of employment is not linked to a pension contract for 12 months, and then it is, and you're back to square one. So basically, it's a fantastic benefit. You can now access your substantial benefits for a lot of people in the 95 scheme, and there is next to no conditions attached to it other than this 10% reduction. Annual allowance. Annual allowance seems to terrify many of the doctors that I speak to, and I'm constantly being asked, should I leave the pension scheme? I think I'm going to get a huge tax bill, etc., etc. So let's see what annual allowance is and whether you actually need to be scared of it or not. So the annual allowance calculation is not based on your NHS pension contributions, i.e. what comes out of your wage packet. It's based on the growth of your NHS pension benefits. And that growth is just worked out by a simple formula by HMRC, which is the value of your annuity at the end of a pension year multiplied by 16 and add your lump sum to that. That gives you a closing value. Take away from that exactly the same that you had at the start of the year, but correct it for inflation so it's a true figure, and that gives your pension input amount or your pension growth. And that is tested against the annual allowance, which used to be 40,000 a year, and has now increased to 60,000 a year. And the tapering allowances have also thresholds have also increased. So you're very unlikely to be tapered to the full amount anymore. You'd have to be a very, very high earner in order to be tapered down to the full amount. In fact, your adjusted income, which is essentially your basic pay plus pension contributions, would have to be £360,000 to be fully tapered. So there's not going to be many people having huge tax bills. But if you do have a huge tax bill, let's analyse how painful it actually is. So this is a real life example. And in this example, the particular consultant took on a director role and increased pay by 15,000 to 130,000. Good. 15,000 pay increase, good. He sees on his wage packet that 18,850 is being deducted, and he gets a brown envelope in October telling him that by virtue of this good pay increase of 15,000, HMRC are kindly requesting double that in a tax bill from him. So these sort of headline figures must be where the adage not paying to go to work comes from, because at headline terms, it doesn't sound like a very good deal, does it? Pay goes up 15,000, but you're going to pay twice as much in tax, and you're actually paying 18,000 in. So let's see what's happened. Prior to the pay increase, this was his pension situation: an annuity of 35,000 and a lump sum of 107,000. The pay increase, because the 95 scheme multiplies back through all your years of service, and it's based on your best final salary, which has now gone up very considerably. When that gets multiplied through, the increase in just 1 year in this person's pension is astronomical. So just to put it in proportion, this is this is half of what the UK old age pension provides, that you have to save into for 35 years. and he's achieved this in 1 year. And on top of that, he gets 19,000 as a tax-free lump sum. So those are incredible. However, he's looking at this tax bill of £31,000. Now, very few people pay their annual allowance tax charges from their back pocket. What they do is scheme pays, which is rather a confusing term, and all it means is your pension pays. It's your scheme which pays. And how you can get rid of a tax bill is you elect to have your scheme, your pension scheme, reduced when you finally retire by an amount which is broadly, it changes year on year, but it's broadly 5% of whatever the tax bill is, i.e. 1/20th. So divide this by around 20, and his pension scheme is not going to increase by this incredible figure of 6.3. It's going to have a modest, I would say, cut of 1.3, and he's going to end up with 5,000 extra pension instead of 6,300, and he's going to end up with 15,000 extra lump sum instead of 19,000. Now, that does not sound a bad deal to me, given that this net contribution is far less than what he thinks the actual cost is each year to him, because this is the gross figure of 18,850, but in tax relief terms, it's only actually costing him £8,500. So what has he actually achieved after he's got rid of all the tax? What has he actually achieved for his cost of his true cost of £8,500? He's achieved £5,000 to be paid every year for the rest of his life, and £15,000 in a lump sum. Back to my analogy of walking into Legal and General. If you went into Legal and General and said, give me a contract that pays me £5,000 every year that I live and £15,000 as a tax-free lump sum, they would charge you round about £115,000. Therefore, it seems to me like a very good deal that he's paid £8,500 for benefits that are worth £115,000. But the tragic thing is that the myth that goes round just seems to concentrate on these headline figures, and people go away with the misconception that, yeah, my pay is going up, but it's all and more being taken away by a tax bill, and I'm not actually that much better off. Well, you are. So that's dealt with annual allowance. Now, the other one, I'm sure you're all like the little man on the figure here, scratching your head about the McCloud. So let's have a look at McCloud. McCloud is a judge who made a judgment on not just NHS pension age discrimination, but all public sector age discrimination. So when people in the 95 scheme who were close to retirement age were allowed to stay in the 95 scheme rather than transfer to the 2015 scheme, but younger doctors were forced to go into the 2015 scheme. They were told that the HMRC were told that this was age discrimination. NHS pensions were told that this was age discrimination, but they did it. So now, 10 years later, it's all being corrected. And how it's being corrected is that the two schemes, the 95 or 2008, are called legacy schemes, i.e. old scheme. And then the 2015 scheme is called the reform scheme. When you retire, so you don't have to do anything now, you don't have to worry about it now, but when you retire or partially retire, you'll be given a choice for how you want what they call a period of 7 years from April 15 to 22. For those 7 years, how you want those 7 years of payments that you've made into the scheme, how you want them allocated to which specific pension scheme. Do you want the 7 years to go into the 95 scheme, or do you want the 7 years to go into the 2015 scheme? And there will be differences in pension growth between the two, and there will also be differences in tax charges consequent on that pension growth between the two. But it's up to you as to which you go into. And at the point of retirement, NHS should be able to provide you with the comparative benefit statements. Timeline, April 22, everybody is now in the 2015 scheme. At October 23, all total reward statements from pensions year 2024 automatically get pushed back into the 1995 scheme. That's the default. But at retirement, you can choose whether to take the default in the 95 or 08 scheme, or whether to have the 7 years transferred into the 2015 scheme. And your final salary link stays in the 95 scheme. And some of you, but not all of you, will have received annual allowance calculations covering the remedy period, because that default, where some people who had gone from the 95 to the 2015 scheme are now, their records are automatically defaulted back into the 95 scheme. That changes their annual allowance tax position. So what they call remedial annual allowance pension saving statements, very punchy statement, should have been sent out to people, and it's the doctor's responsibility to inform HMRC of that. But in a lot of instances, doctors haven't received them yet. So, McCloud choice. Let's have a look at comparative benefits under the McCloud choice. Now, these are all NHS figures, but this isn't an NHS generated document. This is a document that I generate with my partner company, MediFintech, comparing the McCloud choices. So we're able to do that with the NHS figures now. And let's have a look. On this side, we've got the legacy scheme. So this side is saying for those 7 years, 2015 to 2022, I want all my benefits put into the 95 scheme. And this side is saying I want those 7 years allocated to the 2015 scheme. So this particular consultant has got benefits in two sections, 95 and 2015. When he makes a McCloud choice that is the default choice and chooses those 7 years in the 95 section, he has, let me just enlarge this. Sorry. Right. So, 95 section, he's accrued benefits of 58,000. He's retiring at the normal retirement age, so there is no actuarial early retirement reduction, and he's got a little bit of scheme pays to pay. So the scheme pays comes off this figure, and the dark blue figures are the annual standard annuity that he would receive, 58. But let's not concentrate on those because everybody wants the tax-free lump sum, and it's the turquoise figure, and that is 50,000. And what we can see here is that under the standard benefits, he would get 3 times this, and that would be 174,000. But he can actually increase that by nearly 100,000 to the maximum tax-free lump sum figure that I mentioned before, 268. But by doing that, he has to have his pension reduced by £1 for every £12 extra here. So it's about £100,000. And this falls therefore by £8,000, 100 divided by 12, yeah, rounding. And what that means in net monthly income in your back pocket after you've paid income tax as well on this figure of £50,000, £1,000 a week. If you'd fully retired and you weren't working, that would give you this amount of money in your back pocket, £3,600. And in the 2015 scheme, he also wants, at age 60, to take whatever benefits he's accrued up to now in that scheme. But in this instance, that is he's going to get quite a significant discount on his benefits, because for every year that you retire early, your benefits are cut by about 4%. So in this instance, it's 7 years. So it's about 30%, which is this actuarial factor. So what he's accrued which is 4,900. He's accrued 17,000. That's going to get reduced by 30%, circa 5,000, and he's going to get 12,000. And you can see that the dark blue and the light blue are exactly the same. And that's because he's already maxed out his tax-free lump sum in his 95 scheme. So it's pointless sacrificing any of his annual money, his annual pension, in order to get more lump sum, because any more than this on this side would attract a massive tax bill. He'd be paying his tax at his highest marginal rate, which is 45%. So that was doing a McCloud choice of 95. This is doing a McCloud choice in 2015. And you can see that the benefits accrued in the 95 scheme now have fallen from 58 to 44, because he's pushed those 7 years into the 2015 and away from the 95 scheme. And you can see that in the 2015 scheme, he's gone up from 17,000 pension to 35,000 pension, because he's done it the other way around. He's taken the 95 benefits and they've gone into the 2015. And the consequence is, in the 95 section, he's no longer at the maximum tax-free lump sum. He's fallen from 268 to 239. But he can still achieve the maximum tax-free in total, because he can commute, i.e. reduce some of his pension here in the 2015 scheme and get a lump sum there. So the summary of the two is the 95 McCloud choice. He gets 62,000 pension versus £59,000 pension in the 2015 McCloud choice, and the lump sums are exactly the same. So the difference is about 3,000 in terms of annual money, and the actual value of that is about £60,000. So that's your McCloud choice there for this particular person. I've done loads of these, and I've had some where the McCloud choice is nearly 100,000 difference, and I've done some where it's a value of about 1,000. And on average, the pension is 1 or 2,000 different, which has a value of 10 or 20,000 pounds if you take the open market value. So, continuing on McCloud, because it was illegal and the government discriminated and it has to be corrected legally, you can say that anything that you did in your pension scheme during that remedy period for those 5 years, those 7 years, anything that you did that you would now prefer not to have done, now you realize that you can make a choice, you can have it reversed. So McCloud contingent decisions like opting out, giving up added years, or hokey cokey, all of which I've had doctors have done, you can now reverse it, and you don't have to go before a judge with a load of justification. It's just basically, if it happened during that period, and during that period the government were discriminating against you and it was illegal, it needs to get corrected. And the full correction would be that both employer and employee contributions would need to be paid retrospectively with interest. So you obviously wouldn't get, if you opted out, you wouldn't suddenly get 6 years free back from the government. It just means that if you opted out and you've now realized the value of the benefits that you gave up, you're able to reverse that. But whatever you would have paid in the first instance, you're going to have to pay now. But again, you don't pay out of your back pocket. It all comes out of the scheme. So it would be similar to when we did that annual allowance calculation, and the massive boost to the pension had to be cut modestly, and it was still left with a very good, valuable benefit. This is what should happen if you want to reverse any of the decisions that you made during those years. And a huge benefit would be that the final salary link would be restored. So you could have people who opted out, let's say, in 2021 and are now retiring in 2025, and their 95 benefits will be based on what they were earning in 2021, which might have been 80,000 versus what they're earning now, which might be 130,000. And you multiply that 50,000 difference by 30 years service, let's say, and it's hugely beneficial. So this definitely needs to be looked at. Something else that needs to be looked at is, this is a startling figure, and this is from June last year. And this is a figure acquired by Quilter and MediFintech from NHS BSA. There are 143,000 members, 60 years or older, who have not claimed their benefits from the 95 section, even though they have reached the normal pension age of 60. Now, in the 2008 and 2015 schemes, if you delay taking your pension benefits beyond your normal retirement age, it's in my opinion, it's not the best thing to do. But if you do it, you do get a benefit, um, because you're costing the NHS less because you're not taking your benefits. So if you take it 2 years late, they give you a few percent more by delaying it. But that has not been available and still is not available from the 95 section. So what that means is, and I've actually got some doctors who are 67 and 68 years old who have not claimed their 95 benefits. And if they had claimed those benefits are circa £50,000 a year annuity, not claimed for 8 years. That's £400,000, which which is huge. And I must say, I was shocked at this figure. 143,000 members of the NHS pension, and there are about, I think, 1.5 million members. So 1 in 10 who are 60 who could claim their money have put off claiming it for years. Now, there is some benefit in doing that, a bit of benefit, because it will be based on a higher final salary, obviously, 6 years later. But it still does not compensate for unpaid money. So you use it or lose it. And also, there are 65,000 members who don't seem to realise that anybody, NHS pension, any pensioner in the country in any pension scheme can claim their benefits from 55. Now, in the 95 scheme, if you did that, you'd be claiming them 5 years early, which is uh, at 4%, about 4% a year early retirement reduction. It would be reduced by 20%. But is it actually a true reduction? Let's just have a look. So, MediFintech did a presentation with Martin Lewis, and there were lots of questions from NHS members, but most were to do with the basics. And the most popular question was, can I retire early? How does actuarial reduction work? Actuarial just means early retirement reduction. Yeah. So in this example, you have a consultant who, if he retired at 60, he would get a pension of £30,000, which, after he pays income tax on it, is actually a value of 26 and a half. But if he retires at 55, 5 years early, 5 lots of 4% per year reduction, he gets 80% of this, which is net £21,700. So he gets that for 5 extra years. So it's reduced by £4,800 a year. Yeah, falls from 26 and a half to 21.7, but he's getting it for 5 extra years. Those 5 extra years at £21,700 equate to £108,000. So this difference, it would actually take over 22 years to be better off. And another way of looking at it is, when you mention to doctors, oh, do you realise that you can take benefits from 55? Yes, well, I do, but I'm not having a 20% cut. And I say, right, well, visualise your pension benefits as a sack of gold up in the attic. It is not the case that the taxman sends his goblins into the attic, cuts the sack of gold open, and takes 20% out and runs off with it. That isn't the case. The sack of gold is exactly the same size. It just has to last 5 years longer because you're having it paid 5 years earlier. And if you think lots of doctors, when we have this discussion and they visualize the sack of gold and they're still getting all the benefits, but they're spreading it over a longer period. And they're thinking, well, when am I going to make the most productive use of that money? Is it going to be from 55 to nearly 80? Or is it going to be from waiting until 60 and then getting it? And there are, in this particular example, we've looked at the 95 scheme and retiring 5 years early. But in the 2015 scheme, that's got a retirement age of 67. So there will be, well, I know because I'm working with lots of them at the moment. Lots of my doctors are partially retiring now at 60 and taking their 95 benefits, but they got no intentions of staying all the way to 67. So they're going to be going at 62, 63, 64. And they've looked at these sorts of calculations and they've worked out, well, actually, I think I can get more bang for my buck. I'm going to be healthier and more active and more aspirational when I'm younger than I am when I'm older. And now I've realized that I'm not actually squandering 20% of it or 30% of it if you retire 7 years early. I'm actually going quite early. So we've got about 60 seconds left. So I'll just show you finally. This is an actual awards statement from the NHS. Yeah. And if you do what most doctors do, which is wake up one morning and decide, right, I'm going to take my pension, I'll contact my pension rep at the hospital and I'll get a statement and that's it. One, there may be errors in it, and the estimate is that 1 in 8 statements has an error. And I personally have dealt with errors with values of over £100,000 on a reasonably regular basis. And MediFintech have have done obviously lots more than me because I'm just one advisor working with MediFintech. They've reclaimed millions of pounds. So these mistakes are real. This is what you get from the NHS. And it's a point in time. So it shows now. Looking at that, you don't know what it would have been if you'd gone before or after. You haven't got the McCloud choice in there, although this should be providing McCloud statements at some stage. But that's a point in time. Right. This is one page of the 20-page report that I produce for doctors and talk them through absolutely every aspect on it. So they are experts in their own pensions come the end. And what we can see here is, and here it's going from 2023 to 2030, but there's actually another page which takes it right up to 2033 to age 67, but I didn't want to overload you with stats. And we can see we've got accrued benefits, which is pretty much what you'd see on your total reward statement. But then we've got what is actually left after your actuarial reduction and scheme pays reductions in a standard award. And then we've got the standard awards done for McCloud Legacy and McCloud Reformed. And then we've also got maximum lump sum award, and you can see the difference there is huge. So the pension standard 46, lump sum 133, but if you take what practically every doctor does take, what you're actually going to get is not 46, it's 35, and the lump sum is not 133, it's 217. And what you can see is for each year, and here we've got 8 years, and then there's another 3 years. For each year, you can decide when to jump off and what is going to suit you best. And here, this is a comparison. On this side, this is NHS award statement that a doctor was given. The doctor also had my pension report. So not only does it give you all the tax position, all the McCloud choice comparison, what it serves as is a brilliant double check of NHS figures. And we can see here, NHS was saying 39,000. It should actually be 42. That has got a market value of £60,000. So that's a £60,000 error there, which we've corrected. That's just one that we can show you. Okay, I'm being told we're practically at the end. So thank you very much indeed for your time. And I hope sincerely that that's helped illuminate the murky world of NHS pensions a bit for you. And these are my details, and I believe that there will be a follow-up email with contact details for you if you would like me to do one of these pension reports for you. I'd be very happy to give you a 20-minute free, no obligation consultation for your pension and make sure that your retirement is as comfortable for you as it possibly can be, and you don't just accept something, you can plan to make that something the best it possibly can be. Thank you very
Andrew.
much.
Thank you, Andrew. That was really enlightening. We've had some nice comments. Great webinar. Thank you. Thank you again. And one question also, it's a really good unpacking the pension scheme. Can we get a recording? Yes, it will be recorded. It is being recorded, and it will be on YouTube tomorrow. We'll send everybody the link. But if you just look for Surgery International, and yeah, it'll be there this time tomorrow. Thank you again, Andrew. Thank you again, everybody. Next webinar is the future of surgical pathways on April the 16th, and we'll email everybody details to join that one. Thanks, guys. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.